Hey, what is up guys? It is Nathan here. Today we're going to be covering a few photography tips going over shutter speed. Last week we covered aperture. So if you want to learn how to, make creative photos and work with shutter speed, slowing things down, make it look like it's just stopped in motion, or speeding things up to make it look like it's got a drag effect, stay with us, we're going to cover that right now. It says shutter, although my pen ran out, so that's now your shutter are these two things after the aperture which open and close. It opens like this, up, up, down, down. That's what it'll do, up, up, down, down. And that's how it distributes light. So you lift it, lifts up, it moves up pretty much. So it's distributing the light like that, comes up and goes down. And that's what a shutter does, it distributes light to the back sensor. The light from obviously coming in from the aperture. So, we covered aperture last time, how you got shallow depth of field, extreme depth of field. Shallow depth of field makes the background blurry. Extreme depth of field makes it sharp, super sharp, like landscape. So right now, obviously I'm sitting behind a really cool brick wall, which is just graffiti someone's done. And up there is just a pylon of bridge. Out there is beautiful, beautiful waterscape. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working with a shutter speed with these rocks just down here. Yeah, slowing down your shutter will create a motion blur, speeding up your shutter will create a still image like that. So we're going to be working with that. But today I'm going to be using a neutral density filter in order to get the motion blur to show you exactly what it does. But using these practices, I'm also going to show you how to implement aperture with shutter to get the right exposure for your images. So stay tuned guys, let's go. Right, so here we are. We have this lovely rock face and environment around us, and we've got a bridge up here. So we're just going to be shooting these rocks just down here. So let's go ahead and adjust our focus here. Always shoot in manual focus, like I mentioned in last video. So we're going to be working with a very fast shutter speed, so we'll just get everything in freeze motion. Let's go ahead. So we want to go into manual mode. So adjust your dial to manual mode. Sorry, train's going over now. Now once we're in manual mode, this is the shutter right here. Now we want, for a fast shutter, we want to make this here is a fraction of a second. 1/5 of a second, 1/8 of a second, 1/10 of a second. So you can see how fast. So let's take this all the way up to say 3,000 here. Around 3,000, listen. You can see how fast that is? And the image is completely black, which is what I expected. So now if we put it up to like 1 second, have a listen to this. See that? And the image is overexposed. Right now we're going to be working with a very fast shutter speed. So we're going to go about 1,000, actually we'll go 1,500th of a second or something, 1,600, here we go. Now, because it's already dark as it is, let's take this down to about 5.6, and we want to take our ISO up to about 1600. And let's give that a go. And you see this meter here, it shows it's almost exposed, almost just at that right exposure. We'll go more into metering later, but let's just test this out first. Brilliant. And you can see in that photo, that see how some of the water is just as still as possible. So let's make that still, like as still as possible. Here we go. Okay, good, and that's perfect exposure too. It's a little bit underexposed on this end, but right now we're going to switch to our 55 by 250 millimeter lens, and let's try to get a really good close-up of that. Oh, whoa, okay. So you can see I've got my 55 by 250. It's a massive lens. This is just a kit lens, so it's not the best quality, but it does the job if you're just starting up. So let's go back in here. You can see where we are. We're like right at the edge of the rocks now. So if we zoom right in, it's going to be very dark on the camera screen there. You can see the water hitting the sand right there. Right, so let's get that water on the sand. You can see that water just hitting the sand there. So let's try get it in mid motion. So we're going to make sure everything's set right. Let's go back in here. That's good, that's good, that's good. Showing that it's a little underexposed. So we can, if it's a little underexposed, let's go ahead and adjust this again. A bit more movement in the water there. Because let's take a shot normally. Let's take one now. So you can see the water movement. Now let's take one with the normal shutter speed which you would every day, which is probably about an 1/100th of a second or something. And let's take this. Let's give this like f11, which is what you'd normally use it at. And obviously the ISO can go down to maybe to 200. You can see that's almost right. So now we can take that up a bit. That's perfect, perfect. So let's take a photo now. And you can see the water is a little bit, it's moving a little bit too much. So let's compare that photo, this one here, to that one. Wait, not that one. Let's compare that one to like that. You can see how everything's still, and that one, everything's moving. I didn't really get a good example, but you can see there everything's still. Everything's moving in those. Let's go ahead and take this back up to 2000 or 1600, and let's go ahead and take this back down to about 7.1 and this back up to 1006. Just still overexposed. So let's take this down. Brilliant. All right, let's zoom back in. Get our image set up like here, and let's go. See that? Look at that compared to that. Everything, I'll put them up on screen too, but you'll be able to see, it's probably hard to see here, but on screen, that's blurry, and that is extremely crystal clear, and you can see the movement. You can see the still movement. All right, so now you're able to see the difference there. Let's go ahead and make a very slow shutter speed. We'll give it about a 1 second shutter speed, and you can see the difference here. So that you can see how fast that was, or how slow that was. See how it's completely white. You can see in the histogram here, which we'll get into at a later date. Right over here, see that white right there? That is completely overexposed. There's no other colors in the picture, so it's not picking up anything. It's just picking up a pure white. So let's go ahead. Because that's so bright, let's change this to about an f16 and ISO all the way down to 100. You can see it's still very overexposed just in here. So this is where our neutral density filter comes in handy. So now you can pick one of these neutral density filters. This is a variable neutral density filter. As you can see, when I turn this here, it gets lighter. See that? This is the normal camera looking through neutral density filter, and I'm going to make it darker. You can see what happens to the image. See how it makes it, the exposure just changes completely. It makes it lighter, makes it darker. So let's go ahead and put this on. All right, so we're here on the sand. You can see around. We're going to aim for this down here. You can see the water's splashing up against the tripod just there. So this is a 10 to 18 millimeter lens, so it's ultra wide, so it's not that great to do the job here. So what we're going to try to do is get as close to the subject as possible. So you can see the exact type of frame I'm trying to get. So let's go ahead here and set our settings. Now, to get everything to look so smooth, we want to have a shutter speed of at least 1. You can see you can actually capture movement that way, and it kind of makes the water look misty. So we're going to go ahead and set this to about a 1. It's a bit too bright, so we want to take that up to about 16. And you can see our meters reading perfect dead on exposure. So let's go ahead and take the picture. Now you can see how it is starting to take effect. You can see the blurred misty water. So what we're going to do now, because it's got a bit of camera shake in there, if you're going for a long exposure of anything under say 1/50th of a second, you'll need a tripod. And I would also suggest to set your self timer to 2, so it goes off after 2 seconds. So let's go ahead and push that shutter down. 2, 1. Now you can see that misty water taking effect. Isn't that brilliant? let's get a little bit longer exposure, shall we? So because we're taking our exposure shutter speed up, as you can see, every time we take this shutter speed up, this meter moves. Up this way is overexposed, down that way is underexposed. So because I'm moving this up to 2 seconds, the image is going to be overexposed. See how much that changes? Everything's white and a bit gross. So because we're adding more exposure to this image, we do need to readjust. So as you can see now, it's still a little bit overexposed. So let's take it down to 1.6 and let's take the picture. And you can see that got a little bit more movement and made it a little bit smoother. So that's pretty much the gist of how things work. So let's, you know what, let's change this a bit. Let's get a bit of a landscape look for you, and then you can check out how those landscape photographers kind of get their nice, you know, smooth looking photos. I mean, there are a lot of edits in Lightroom and whatnot. And now you can see the exposure's all right. It probably could use a bit less exposure. So we'll take the shutter speed down to 1. Let's go. Now, as you can see from that image, the water is very smooth. I mean, the image is a bit gross, but at least you can see the water is very smooth. So that's how they get those ultra long exposure shots. So now we've been through shutter speed. This is what I was using, this neutral density filter. You can see it gets darker and darker and darker. So you can use this for slower shutter speeds during the day, and you can get that nice effect. Now this set me back about $180. You can get cheaper ones. You can get ones like I suggested 10 stop, because that way you can have a longer exposure during the day and have a nice kind of smooth transition. So you probably picked up a little bit today. I didn't really explain it, but with an aperture and a shutter, when you adjust your aperture, you also have to adjust your shutter speed, kind of like a little bit of a scale. So for example, when we were doing this long 1 second shot, we needed to have a lower number aperture. So a lower number meaning anything below 8 to 22. So if you're letting in less light, then you've got to have your shutter open longer, if that makes sense, because the more light coming in, the less light coming in, the less light that's hitting the shutter, which is allowed to open for the sensor, so the less light the sensor's getting. So go on, test it out. Test out aperture priority mode and shutter priority mode. Try using shutter priority. It'll pick the best aperture for your shutter, and then it'll give you an idea of what you should be using for those specific priorities. So, thanks again guys. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to subscribe in the link down here. I upload every Saturday, or you can check out my previous video here, Aperture, if you haven't done so already, to help you understand more about how the camera works. Thanks guys, until next time.